Welcome everybody into a new edition of Warm Weather Fans, the Sunbelt Podcast. I am your host, Brian Stone, joined once again this week by Zeke Palermo. Zeke, it was a weird week in the Sunbelt. There was a lot of things to talk about. You mentioned before we started recording that you almost got into a fist fight at the Bills Falcons game on Monday night. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was rolling about 10 people deep. Mostly my dad's from Buffalo, and so all of his buddies had the excuse to come into Atlanta and spend the long weekend with him. So I tagged along with like my girlfriend and cousins and whatever. So I mean the whole family's there. And when we get to our seats, there's a guy in front of us with, it's called a watered buffalo hat. It's like a Flintstones thing, I guess. That's way before me. But yeah, I mean, it's like a Cat in a Hat, Dr. Seuss type thing. And he's sitting right in front of me. Mm-hmm. So initially, at kickoff, my girlfriend very, very politely, "Hey, do you mind taking off your hat? We can't see some of the field." And he starts grumbling about it. But he takes the hat off. The Falcons go down, score on the first drive. And as we're lining up for the kickoff, he puts it right back on. And I mean, he is blocking from, we're on the away side. So he's blocking from about the 50 to the 10 of my vision. Wow. That's 40% of the field.
Right.
And so, so I'm like, all right. So I lean over, "Hey man, I don't, we asked you to take the hat off. Could you mind keeping it off?" And he starts chirping at me. And I'll be honest, I got so hot about this. I don't remember what happened. I don't know how it devolved.
You just saw red.
But all of a sudden, I'm going at it. His wife is going at it with my aunt. His son, who's my age, is going at it with my dad.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, it is just a family like shouting match.
That's so weird.
And so the guy in front of me ends up cooling. His wife cools him down. And so we've kind of settled the beef. He's still, bitching and moaning. Every time someone stands up for a first down, he, turns around and like, "You going to say something? Whatever, jackass." But the guy in front of my dad is making it a point to stay standing up. So he blocks the view. So my dad's like, "All right, well, screw this." And he goes and gets security. I don't know if that was the right move, but he's like, "The guy's standing up. I can't see the game." And so
right.
the security lady comes. He's like, "You need to sit down or we're going to ask you to leave." This is all within the first two drives of the game. I can't. So then, second quarter starts, pretty much the whole group leaves. And we think, all right, they're getting food or whatever. A couple of them come back, but the dad of the family, the guy that I was arguing with initially, never came back at all. And the kid that was in front of my dad that was being a jerk only came back at the start of the fourth quarter. I have no idea where they went. It's the Benz, so it's big. They could have gone anywhere in that stadium. There's so many. It's so like corporate friendly places for you to eat or watch or whatever. But I mean, this place was packed. It was like 50% Bills fans. So I have no idea where he went. But he eventually came back, and I mean, he still had the temple blood vein was still bursting. Yeah. And look, I've tried to self-reflect and realize, like, what did I do to escalate it? But I think this guy was just so attached to his hat. And it was hurt that we asked him to take it off. It was crazy.
That's nuts.
It was crazy, man.
Okay, I'm going to keep this really quick. This did not happen to me. This happened to my wife's master's professor. Her master's professor knew a guy that wrote a movie. Mm-hmm. And he went to the premiere. And he was at the movie premiere, and he's sitting, watching, trying to see the movie. Yeah. And there's a lady with a big floppy hat in front of him. And he's like, "Hey, ma'am, could you take the hat off? Like, you're impeding my ability to like see the screen." And this woman doesn't respond. And so he goes one more time. He goes, "Ma'am, we're inside. You don't have to wear a hat. Like, can you just take it off? Like, it's dark in here. Nobody can see anything anyway." Doesn't respond. He kicks the back of her seat, goes, "Hey, lady, take the hat off." She turns around. It's Sandra Bullock.
That's crazy. Was she in the movie?
No, she was just there for the premiere.
Well, like, was it her premiere? Okay.
No, she wasn't in the movie. But she was just there, I guess, to see the movie. I don't know. You know how random celebs show up to other stuff.
That's funny.
So So we've told our hat stories, our individual hat stories. Let's get to, we're doing actually like a double episode for this one. So due to my travel schedule, I had to go to a wedding this past weekend. Zeke went to Monday Night Football, so we actually didn't have time to kind of sync up and record. We're recording this on Tuesday. We're gonna knock out what our week 7 takeaways from the Sun Belt were, and then talk a little bit about week 8. Week 8 is headlined by one gigantic game and then kind of just some smaller ones sprinkled in. So we'll probably spend most of our time of the preview section on JMU Old Dominion, because that feels at this point kind of like the de facto conference championship as it sits today. But so let's start off with week 7. I'll go ahead and start off. My team played on Thursday night and totally stunk it up. Georgia Southern was down 28-7 to Southern Miss at halftime. I know they eventually lose by like just 3. They had like a little bit of a false comeback. I know we had talked about Southern Miss's red zone struggles in recent weeks. Turns out red zone offense doesn't matter when you're throwing touchdowns of 50 and 30 yards the way that Braylon Braxton was to put the Golden Eagles up big over Georgia Southern. Braxton finished with 239 and 2 touchdowns. He had the 13th best PFF grade in the country in week 7, which kind of illustrates how poor Georgia Southern's defense is. Georgia Southern's offense and defense, I guess by extension, looked totally inept in the first half, and that pretty much set the tone for the rest of the game. I think this boils my issues with Clay Helton down a little bit to kind of one singular thing. There was an interview with Helton after the game, and they asked him at one point, JC French threw 3 interceptions in the loss. They asked him after the game, they were like, did you ever consider making a change at quarterback? And he says, yeah, when he threw that 3rd pick, I considered it, but I wanted to see the way that he came out for the next drive. And I'm like, this is why this guy can't win. Like, because he literally, he can't get out of his own way. So when you watch a guy, and he watched Davis Brin do this through all of 2023, when you watch a guy throw interception after interception and you're just standing there going, what can you do? Like, you're a person in the stands, but you're the head coach and you make these calls, these decisions. I mean, I don't know, man. I've said to you, I'm probably not going to be super glued to Georgia Southern games from here on. I think this game pretty much solidified that fact for me, because regardless of whether they win in week 8 and they beat a Georgia State team that looks just as bad as they are, I can't bring myself to care about how this team does until Clay Helton's no longer the coach. I simply can't. I can't muster the emotional energy to get upset. Really, I kind of just shrug and laugh. Like, that was all I did. I watched the finale of Peacemaker season 2 at halftime, and I missed parts of the 3rd quarter, but I didn't miss anything really. So I was just kind of like, that was where I am with the team, which is this show that's on that I could watch anytime. I just cut it on at halftime, and I was like, whatever I miss of this game, I'll catch up to it later.
Yeah. What is really perplexing to me, among many things about Georgia Southern right now, is, or maybe not perplexing, but definitely makes me even more sympathetic to the cause, is that Southern still has not made the scapegoat move of firing the defensive coordinator, which is obviously equally as dysfunctional as Clay Helton. But, when you do that, it buys you several more weeks. It lets the head coach keep going. And again, I think maybe I'm wrong, but my perspective, what I've observed is that a lot of Southern fans have kind of come to terms with the fact that Clay Helton is unfortunately going to be here like at least another year, just because of the volume of his buyout and how severely that would cripple the athletic department in paying how much they owe him.
Did you hear about the contract stuff that came out like a couple weeks ago? Did you see that?
I mean, I saw that it was numbers. I didn't see too much outside of that.
Okay. So on a previous episode, I made a point about Jared Benko was the previous AD at Southern who hired Helton. Nobody knew this. This was not reported anywhere until last year. Benko, and then I guess last year, Davis had secretly been signing Clay Helton to 5-year extensions every year after the year ended.
Sure.
So after 2022, they go 6-7. He signs him to a 5-year extension on top of the deal he already had. 2023, even the Davis Brin year where they looked totally hopeless and hapless, they signed him to another 5-year extension that wasn't reported. And then last year he wins 8 games, so they signed him to another 5-year extension, and then that gets reported because he won 8 games, so it's more palatable to the rest of the audience. The only way that we found this out was that a Georgia Southern fan FOIA'd the school. This was not a reporter that did this. This was a fan, because this is how shoddy, I guess, the reporting on Georgia Southern is from like a media perspective. So I guess the fan base will continue to FOIA the school after every single season and see if he gets 5-year extensions indefinitely. But yeah, this is what I mean. Like, I'm out until Clay Helton is not in Statesboro any longer. Whether he gets a offensive coordinator job at a P5 or whatever, I don't know why anybody would take him. But until he's out, like, I can't bring myself to like get upset about this any longer. Like, it kind of is what it is.
Sure. One more point on this to the Clay Helton side of it. Second highest rated recruit in school history, Weston Bryant, does not record an offensive stat, but does make the tackle after JC French's third interception. So he's on the field.
They threw a fade to him in the corner of the end zone.
Yeah.
They threw a fade to the backup quarterback in the corner of the end zone. This is what I mean. Like, I mean, nobody there uses any sort of logic. And I guess it doesn't matter when you keep getting extended in perpetuity, because, like, what are they going to do? Fire you? Like, you can't. So, a couple of other things here. I feel the worst for Camden Brown, this Auburn transfer, because he has been an animal for Georgia Southern on maybe the most dysfunctional team that we've had in a minute. The only other thing I can see that comes close is Chad Lunsford's final season, where he kind of just threw the towel in and was like, whatever, I don't care anymore. Fire me.
Sure.
Brown had 12 catches, 158, and a touchdown. Southern Miss had 5 sacks. Chris Jones had 3 of those. And then, Georgia Southern scores in the second half to make it a 3-point game. And then, again, this is another illustration of, like, the whole team is just dysfunctional. So they do a kickoff. Southern Miss goes to return it. If they stop them, I think they had 2 timeouts at that point. So they would have called both and then had to wait for the runoff for a potential punt. Instead, what happens is a Georgia Southern player commits a personal foul, which moves it up 15 yards and basically means if Southern Miss gets a first down, it not only means the game is over, but if they found a way to stop them, then they could kick a field goal because they'd basically be in field goal range at that point. So it's just dysfunction, like, all the way down. I want to give credit to Southern Miss. They obviously played great, but I didn't learn anything about Southern Miss in this game. And I guess I didn't learn anything about Southern either, because I knew Southern was a train wreck. But Southern Miss looks as good as advertised. But if you're going to compete for a Sunbelt title, you cannot let a team like Georgia Southern come back and almost tie it up late in the game. Like, you've got to put your foot on the gas. And that was the one thing Southern Miss didn't really do.
Yeah. And for Southern Miss, again, I don't think we learned a ton about this, but they've now beaten Southern and App with a relatively soft West division. It looks still early. Like, I think Troy is still in the mix. I think if Lunch continues showing up, they could make a run at the West.
Their defense, we'll get to it, but their defense just isn't good enough.
But I mean, right now, Southern Miss is kind of in that pole position for in the West, and that could, I mean, they're set up well for the rest of the season as they play ULM, Arkansas State, South Al, teams that we're not super high on.
Sure. All right. So you mentioned Louisiana. Let's get to the JMU Louisiana game. So Alonzo Barnett really struggled last week against Georgia State in that 7-point win on the road. He bounced back pretty nicely in this game. 290 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. This may have been a Landon Ellis breakout game, as he had 120 and caught all 3 touchdowns from Barnett. I actually did the take away your longest run game with Wayne Knight, their running back.
Yeah.
On paper, you look and go, oh, 20 carries for 111. That's pretty nice. Except he had a 49-yard run at one point. So when you take that away, it was 19 carries for 62 yards, which is bad. That's like what, 3 yards a carry and change.
Sure.
You texted me about this. At the very least, what you have in Lunch Winfield for Louisiana is a guy that's willing to throw the ball down the field, which is something we did not see at all when Daniel Beal was in there. So
yeah, so I looking at this per PFF, in what he played probably 4 or 5 games. Daniel Beal did this year. He only attempted 13 passes over 20 yards in those 5 games through what, like a 2.5 full games, not even.
yeah.
Lunch Winfield has attempted 16 passes that deep or longer. So he's showing to some degree the same issues that Lunch Winfield did, or I'm sorry, Daniel Beal did, in the sense that sometimes it feels like you have to beg him to complete a pass. But whereas Daniel Beal, you had to beg him to complete a pass, with Lunch, it's he's pushing the ball downfield. They're asking a lot more out of him, and therefore those completion percentage numbers are a lot lower. And that's without considering the obvious mobility addition that he has, the leg up that he has in that sense, over Beal, or really over Walker Howard, the 1.5 that we saw out of him. But what we knew about Walker Howard coming in, Lunch is just far more mobile. But man, this defense, this is a JMU team that last week really struggled to score points against Georgia State. We know Alonzo Barnett's a coin flip. He's kind of like what we talked about for a long time about Darren Granger, where it's like one week he looks like he could be the best quarterback in the conference, but sometimes he just disappears for 120 yards on like 55%.
Yeah.
I mean, JMU is still firmly in the poll out of the East. This team is really, really good. The defense continues to really, really strive, because we've seen Louisiana, even with their reduced numbers, like, we've seen even under Lunch, this team is good. But I mean, I don't know. What I learned most is that JMU is really, really that guy against really their first competent opponent in a while.
Yeah, I mean, JMU's defense is obviously stifling. It won them the Georgia State game because they only allow 7 points. It really helped them in this game as well. I mean, frankly, what you said about Lunch pushing the ball down the field, really throwing the ball down the field with Lunch and scrambling are really the only 2 things they can do offensively. Like, they really, really struggled to run the ball in this game, and I think that is a testament to JMU's defense. I mean, JMU, according to PFF, had 4 linebackers with a grade of 75 or higher. And those guys were Trent Hendrick, Amar Thomas, Drew Spinagati, and then I don't want to butcher this guy's name, but I think it's Emmanuel Eziagu. I think is his name. Yeah. So their defense is nasty, and they're the reason why they've remained, even with the hiccups that the offense has had. I mean, the defense almost won them the Louisville game. By the way that the front 7 played specifically. If it wasn't for that long run that they gave up right at the end, which was kind of just a backbreaker, they were firmly in that game despite how the quarterback situation was going. Yeah, I mean, good for Barnett for showing back up. He'll need to make it 2 games in a row next Saturday, and that's where the difficulty comes in, is like the consistency is really just not there with him on a weekly basis. So you just never know what you're going to get. Like you said, he's a coin flip. So we'll see. They've got a big showdown with I guess an angry Old Dominion team next Saturday, but it's in Harrisonburg. JMU's at home, so they've got the advantage on that front. So we'll just have to see how it plays out, because the JMU goes from looking like a team that could represent the G5 in the playoff 1 week to a team that can barely beat Georgia State and switches back and forth kind of on a whim. So I don't really know. But yeah, good win for JMU. Louisiana, it might be just time to pack it in this season and work for 2026 because this defense is not it. They've had defensive issues all year. Even in that game that they beat Marshall in overtime, where Lynch Winfield really took over, their defense was bad. And that's kind of been the name of the game for a lot of teams in the Sun Belt this year. Is like bad defense is sinking a lot of pretty productive offenses, I think.
What's the heat check on Michael Desormeaux?
I don't think you can really put the heat on him this year because think about it this way. He went to a Sun Belt title game last year. Last year, he had the Sun Belt Player of the Year with the quarterback. I can't think of his name. Not Fields, but
Woolridge.
Yeah, I mean, his quarterback got injured in the first game of the season. Like he's been fielding 2 backups the whole season. Now, does that excuse the offensive line problems in the defense? Absolutely not. But who knows if you finally let, the entrenched starter settle in after the first game, who knows what the offense looks like if you're not constantly switching back and forth between Lynch and Beal. So I don't know, but no, I don't think a year after going to the Sun Belt title game you could put the heat on him like that. I think it's too early. All right, so let's get to your game here. So Appalachian State beats Georgia State. I mean, no surprise here, 41-20. JJ Cole looks like the answer for Dowell Loggins at quarterback. They had been struggling with him injured, starting AJ Swan, and Noah Gillian was getting some time, and Billy Wiles was making some appearances here and there. Georgia State, I'm sure you're aware of this. Georgia State to this day has still never beaten App head-to-head. They're 0-12 all time. And Cole threw for 309 and 4 touchdowns. So there's a lot to like if you're an App fan. A couple of weeks ago it looked really dire after that Southern Miss loss, and now they're not going to probably beat like a JMU, but they're going to be firmly kind of in that third position behind Old Dominion and James Madison.
Yeah, from an App perspective, there was a lot to like. They spread the ball out really, really well. A bunch of different guys getting long receptions of 15, 20 yards. Defensively, they forced 3 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. Had the interception. So and then obviously JJ Cole, who was as good a quarterback as I've seen from App in several years, at least in this game. He ended up going 21 for 32 for 309, 4 touchdowns to 4 different players. Georgia State, the only positive is that they only committed 2 penalties. Coming into this game, the most penalized team in the country. I would imagine they probably still are, even with the 2 penalty game. But that's really the only bright side out of this. We're still playing hinky-finky with Cameron Brown and TJ Finley. Brown took a majority of snaps, probably for the first time this year. He's been 1B to TJ Finley's 1A for most of the season. But Brown took a lot more snaps than Finley did. So I'm optimistic that we're moving in that what I believe to be right direction with a guy that's younger and has just frankly played better than Finley up to this point. But the run game still isn't there. There are guys making plays, but it's really just Ted Hurst. And it's what's I think frustrating above all else is that it's pretty apparent Del McGee is not going to work here, and that his time is limited. I don't know, unless they turn it around right here, I'm not certain he makes it through the off season. And it's really frustrating because there is talent, especially on the defensive side. I think that goes underrated about Georgia State rather. There are some really, really talented guys on the defense. Funchess Lewis is one guy that I've liked for 2 years now. So there's talent on that side of the ball, but I mean, they're going to be scared away. They're going to, attract, even if it's conference on conference violence, they're going to be attracted away to teams that have an established head coach, have a running game that will allow your offense to do anything. So, we'll talk about it, but I think, we're still trying to figure it out with Clay Helton, but there's a world where whoever loses the State Southern game, their head coach gets fired.
I don't think there's a world where Clay Helton gets fired this year.
Sure.
He's owed like 75% of a $3 million buyout. And unless they have some secret donor who is like willing to fork over the cash, like I just don't see, I don't think it's weird that they priced themselves out of a buyout. Like they made a buyout so high that they can't get out of it. But yeah, I think Dell McGee truly is, vulnerable as far as like he could get fired any week, and like I wouldn't really be that surprised. I do want to ask, let's imagine that he sticks around and God forbid Hugh Jackson doesn't become the interim coach. When do you think he finally hands the keys over to Cameron Brown and goes, "Hey, TJ, this isn't working, man." Like 1 week TJ Finley's okay, and then the next week he turns in a performance like he did against App.
That's kind of what's perplexing about it. It's like at this point you're 1-6. What more are you really waiting for? I guess we're only 2 games into conference play, so there's an argument to be made there because you played Ole Miss and Vandy in the first 4 weeks, and then you had an FCS, Murray State, and then also Memphis. So there's maybe the argument of, we were waiting for conference play to really do what we're doing. But I mean, we've now seen the offense for 2 weeks under both guys. You really, because they're each only playing half, you have 1 full game sample size. And they could have beat any better offense, any competent offense would have beat JMU last week. That scored only 14 points. And again, the defense did you no favors allowing 41 points against App, but they put up another stinker against App. So if he is not, it's kind of like with Clay Helton, if he's not given the keys over yet, if we don't go into the Southern game or, at the very latest, the South Al game the week following, I don't know if that transaction will ever happen, because what are you waiting for? What do you need to see out of him, or what are you waiting to see out of TJ Finley that you haven't gotten yet? I really, really don't understand that part.
I don't either. And just last thing on this, this was why I gave Charles Huff so many props last year when he made the move with Braxton, because there's a lot of coaches like Dell McGee, Clay Helton, who will watch their guy just stink it up week after week and like won't make a move for reasons that remain unclear. And I know that some of these guys have NIL funds that are sunk into them, so I guess they don't understand the concept of sunk cost fallacy. But at a certain point, it's like you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. Like you are making a bad decision and sticking with it just for the sake of doing it is almost what it feels like. All right, so let's move on next here. This is probably, I guess, the most surprising outcome of any game that we'll see in the Sun Belt this year. Marshall kills Old Dominion 48-24. In fact, it was 48-10 in the fourth quarter with 9:07 left to go. So those 2 touchdowns were in total garbage time. This was a classic trap game for Old Dominion. They looked ahead to JMU. They almost made the mistake that James Madison made against Georgia State, but JMU was good enough and playing a low enough competition team in the Sun Belt to take advantage, even if they didn't bring their A game. 5 turnovers from Old Dominion, 2 picks from Joseph. He threw a pick 6 to open the game, or in the first quarter, to Boogie Trotter, who returned it for a touchdown for Marshall. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the game. They had 2 other fumbles. Old Dominion got stuffed on 2 fourth down runs inside the Marshall's 5-yard line in this game. So Old Dominion did literally everything you could think of to lose the way that they did, because it's one thing to lose by like a field goal or by 7 points. It's another to get absolutely housed the way that they did. And of course, I texted you this. Of course, the week we give them their flowers, finally, we're like, hey, we'd like to be contrite and say, hey, we'll go ahead and give you guys the benefit of the doubt. They turn in a stinker like this, and I'm like, yeah, if they can do that, then why could they lose 2 games in the back half of the season? Like after this one, they could lose to JMU and they could lose to 2 more teams, and I'd be like, yep, that's the Ricky Ronnie in Norfolk experience.
Yeah. I mean, the keys here for Marshall were, for one, obviously the turnovers, right? That's a given. But they, for the first time, became the first team maybe ever to really contain Colton Joseph, 12 rushes for 50 yards. And we've been saying for weeks that there are not options around Joseph to pick up when that becomes the issue, when Joseph is throwing 2 interceptions, when he's only rushing in air quotes for 50 yards. That's great out of a quarterback, but they've been so reliant on those rushing yards. Traquan Jones had shown up in recent weeks. This week, it's Marky James, but they only give him the ball 12 times for 83 yards, right? So this is the issue that, again, last week, splendid timing. We kind of, to some degree, say we were wrong. There are some real guys around Joseph. Well, they didn't show up here. Trey Brown, who's been, one of their best receivers all year, only 1 catch. He takes it for 71 yards and a touchdown, but only the 1 catch. Naeem Abdul-Rahim Gladding, 3 catches. Again, 71 yards off of that is really, really impressive, but only 3 catches. You need more out of him in these big games. And this is all not to speak about the defense that allowed 48 points to what we had criticized in the past as a very checked out merchant reliant Marshall offense that really doesn't look like the Marshall offenses that we've seen in the past. Last year with Braylon Braxton, and previous years with some of Rasheen Ali, some of the best running backs in the conference. So I'm very, very frustrated at myself for giving Old Dominion the benefit of the doubt and letting them prove me wrong, because this is what we were concerned about. When you shut down Colton Joseph, you either do not have the options to utilize around him, or you have not game planned for the situation where Colton Joseph can only gain 50 yards on the ground. Who are we going to go to? What are we going to do to make sure that is not doesn't impact our game? Or there is no contingency plan. There's no contingency plan. And we saw that. And so when we come up against, I don't know if Marshall is the smartest defensive coordinator in the conference, but like when you come up against good defensive coaches, good defensive coaching, and they say, if you just keep Colton Joseph in the pocket, you make sure that he can't step up and find that seam. They run like a very Georgia Tech-y type offense. When you figure out how to handle that third back option in a quarterback, who are they going to look to?
Well, I will say, like what you said about the running game, it's hard to utilize a running game when you're down as many points as they are. I mean, their defense just nobody showed up on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, we had talked about Del Rio Wilson being risk averse throwing the ball. This was one of the first times where he actually was kind of pushing the ball down the field. So he finished with 9.1 yards per attempt, and his ADOT was almost 10 yards. So he was throwing the ball down the field.
Yeah.
It's not a great sign when Marshall is in a 48-45 shootout with Louisiana, and then you guys turn around and are like, we have no offense that can score against that Marshall defense. And it's like, Louisiana didn't have any issues. What happened then? So that's what I mean is like, I know that everybody in the preseason was like, you guys are morons for doubting this team. And I think by and large, they were correct, but they still, I mean, if they lose to JMU this Saturday, they're going to be 2 games out of the division race for the East. They're going to need JMU to lose 3 in the back stretch. Now, if they win, they control their own destiny as both teams with 1 loss. So this game becomes huge for Old Dominion because it's basically their season in a nutshell. There's no way JMU's losing 3 more games down the back stretch, like conference games. So it's huge for JMU, but it is literally the season on the line on Saturday for Old Dominion, because you also never know whether you're going to get one of these performances. They could go play, I don't know, Coastal and be like, we only scored 10 points today. And it's like, why? And there's no real answer as to why. That's what I mean,
that was kind of the crux of our argument in the preseason. And again, we were we were off base in that there are no playmakers around Colton Joseph, but it would appear that we're right in that there's no plan outside of Colton Joseph. There is, when he is contained, which, is not easy to do, right? You're not planning for something that's going to happen every week. Not every defense has really the speed or the coaching to be able to stop him. I mean, that's what we're seeing at Georgia Tech right now. Like, Haynes King is not the best quarterback in the entire world. He's not the best running quarterback in the country even, but because, it's so difficult to stop and defenses just aren't as quick, you can't stop it. But when you come up against these teams and trust James Madison will know how to stop Colton Joseph, trust they will, 24 points against a really bad Marshall defense.
14 in total garbage time, when Marshall had totally been like, yeah, we don't care, we're up 38 in the fourth quarter. Like, what, you guys aren't going to score 38 points in the fourth quarter. Yeah, so this sets up, like I said, like a huge game coming up this Saturday, and Marshall feels like they're getting more and more of, we found a quarterback that we can actually make work. I think their biggest thing is defensively, there's no consistency on a weekly basis. They can give up 40 to anybody. They could hold a team to 10 and force 5 turnovers. Like, there's no in between. You just kind of, I guess, kind of ride the ride and see where it goes weekly. All right. Getting to the next one here, Coastal Carolina defeats ULM 23-8. Coastal, this is the quintessential Sun Belt experience here. Coastal beats ULM with a quarterback, Samari Collier, that completed 30% of his passes. He was 5 of 15, and they won by double digits. He profiles, I guess, more as like a pure running QB. He cashed in basically the game-winning score in the third quarter, 39-yard rushing touchdown when they were up 16-8. ULM, this is what we say every single week. You cannot put it in Aiden Armenta's hands and expect it to go very well. They scored 8 points. They couldn't move the ball at all. They were 1 of 13 on third down. They were 1 of 4 on fourth down. Armenta was 6.1 yards per attempt. He completed under half of his passes. This is everything we say about Armenta every single week. He has been the easiest person quarterback wise to nail down, because there's almost no surprises with him. There's never a game where he'll show up and throw for 330 and 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns, and you'd be like, wow, he really took over this game. It's like, no, we rely heavily on the running game, and we hope that Armenta doesn't have to throw more than 21 times in a game.
Yeah, Armenta on the year, his highest yardage total, 185. He did that on 17 completions, 26 attempts. I mean, that is just the Aiden Armenta game, 160 on like 55%. Samari Collier, I want to talk about him. A guy who I didn't know. I'd never heard of him until Saturday. He's not a guy. He transferred in this year from Hutchinson Community College in the Kansas Jayhawk Community College Conference. Hutchinson last year won the NJCAA. He was the conference co-player of the year and first team all conference. Shout out to this guy. He's a senior. He's never taken he played a little bit, or I'm sorry, he played for Illinois but never appeared, redshirted in 2021 as a true freshman, has played the past 2 seasons in community college at Hutchinson, where again, last year they won the JUCO National Championship. And then comes out, I mean, this is as good as anything we've seen from a Coastal quarterback, right?
That's not a high bar to clear.
Again, like even on 30%, what you're giving us is a running option that did not exist previous. And so it would be hard to imagine that they don't look to ride that hot hand. Again, 5 for 15 for 37 through the air, but leads the team in carries and in rushing yards. That's a really cool story, and I hope that they keep looking to him, and I hope that he can find more success than Tad Hudson.
I mean,
that's it.
He would have to, right? Like, I feel like I don't know that a guy that completes 30% of his passes is good long term for winning games, but if you're Tim Beck, like, what's your other option? You gonna go back to Tad Hudson? Like, no. So, like you said, he gives you that option with his legs. He even more. This is obvious because he's not as good as Colton Joseph, but he probably even more than Joseph is like, if you kept him in the pocket, he would just probably crumble. Because like if you complete 30% of your passes, like you're barely a quarterback. Like there are running backs, wide receivers that could complete 30% of their passes. I mean, that's not a hard number to hit. Two notes lastly before we moved on from this game. Two coastal linebackers graded out very well in this one. You had Marcus Ross with an 84 PFF grade and Noah Flemings with a 72. Really contributed to defeating ULM. Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is the quintessential Sun Belt game. It's like, what other conference can you see a quarterback come in and go 5 of 15 and they win by 2 scores? I can't name another major conference where that that takes place. So, yeah, good for them. All right. Last game of the night on Saturday, it was Texas State and Troy. I have a lot of talking points for this game, so strap in because you can jump in whenever you feel like. But I had a lot of takeaways from this one. Number one, Brad Jackson, according to PFF, had the highest passing grade in the country this past Saturday. It was 91.9. He threw for 248 yards. Tucker Kilcrease was 4th in the country in passing grade this Saturday. With a 90, 415, 5 touchdowns. Both of those have to be career highs for him because he never approached anything like that last year. It is encouraging he can win games like that where the defense just absolutely doesn't show up because more often than not, Troy's defense is not what it was when John Summerall was there. So you're going to have probably games closer to this than not. On the Texas State side, this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll hand it off to you.
Sure.
This is the GJ Kinney thing that we always talk about. So they started the season 3-1. They're now 3-3. They blew a 28-7 first quarter lead and lost this game in overtime. They had a 31-17 lead at halftime. This is the same thing they did against Sam Houston last year when they had a 22-0 first quarter lead and blew that and lost on a game-winning field goal by Sam Houston's kicker. They were 10 of 17 on third down, and they still found a way to lose. They don't have a defense. And this is why we were always questioning, like, what is this win total before the season started? Because it's like mostly a brand new team and no difference makers on the defensive side of the ball.
We'll start with Texas State and then I'll move back to Troy. This has been the script for them for several weeks. ESPN has Texas State at a 97% win percentage at the 2-minute warning of the fourth quarter. And they just fold. I think, I don't know, enjoy the Pac-12. I mean, that's really all there is to say, right? Like, enjoy. I mean, you've tweeted this. Enjoy whatever like Big 12 team wants to take a shot at you, GJ Kinney, because he's in that. I don't want to.
James.
There are other, James, where he's in like the almost the Butch Jones zone now, where it's you are doing more than good enough to keep your job on a year-to-year basis, especially when Texas State looks back at Jake Spavital and remembers what they had with him, right? Sure. So he is more than good enough to keep this job for several more years. But I really feel that it might have just been last year when they had Jordan McLeod that we saw the pinnacle of this Texas State team. They exhibit some of the same frustrations that you've said about the Clay Helton defenses for several years now, in just like an inability to play a 60-minute game, a real inability to show grit in the back half of the season. I mean, Texas State, huge slide last year. It looks like they're in the midst of one right now. If it'll extend the whole season or if they'll come out, yet to be seen. But I think this is the GJ Kinney experience. So either this is good enough or this is what you're stuck with, essentially. Unless you kind of realize whoever AD, whoever realizes that this is the ceiling. Troy, Tucker Kilcrease has put together 3 really good games back to back to back. Against Buffalo, he threw for 148 on 60%. Against South Al, he threw for 200 on 60%, and then goes 30 for 39, 415, as you said, on 76%. Troy, over the past 3 weeks, has looked really, really good. And I've been very impressed by, because it all starts with that Buffalo comeback where they scored 21 unanswered, forced 3 consecutive 3-and-outs to beat Buffalo 21-17. They then come out and beat South Alabama. It takes you a little while to get started and then beat Texas State. Troy looks really, really good, and that they're a team that I think understandably so, you and I and a lot of other Sunbelt people really didn't look at with a ton of confidence. It's obviously difficult because, as you mentioned, you're always going to have the comparison of, whereas GJ Kinney gets the benefit of being compared to Jake Spavital, here at Troy, Gerard Parker has the downside of being compared to John Summerall. So you kind of get the opposite impact, but they're a team that I just did not expect this out of. However, we'll say I don't love 41 points against Texas State. I don't love 24 against South Alabama. There's still, like, the defense is now kind of the point of interest, whereas in previous year, or point of concern, whereas in previous years it may have been the offense. Because again, in the past 3 weeks, 48, 31, 21 points out of this Troy offense. They're surging, man. And it kind of depends on how the back half of this slate shakes out, but we might be looking at a final week Troy versus Southern Miss. Winner goes to the conference championship in the final week.
I just think with Troy's defense, you can't, like, there's a real ceiling on this team. Like, it was really good to win this game, as well as, like you said, Buffalo and South Alabama. But when you play another competent Sunbelt team, like Southern Miss can score points. They can also get some stops. Troy can do one of those things. They can score points. Getting stops, I don't know. Especially when
I would say I really do think it's going to come down to that final week, though. Because as you look at the rest of the Troy schedule, and as you say, the problem is, if a team can put up points, you're in trouble. ULM, jury's still out on Louisiana, but ULM's not doing it. Jury's still out on Louisiana. Arkansas State, it's like a 50-50 whether or not they score 50 or 7. Old Dominion is tough, but it seems like maybe we found a recipe to stop them. Then you get Georgia State.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't think they have the game planning or the personnel to do what Marshall did to Colton Joseph.
I think that's reasonable. But I would argue that before this week, we would have said that Marshall was in the same boat, that Marshall didn't have the game plan nor the personnel to stop Colton Joseph.
Well, they have a defensive-minded head coach, so I'd at least give them the benefit of that, who has coached for years at, like, West Virginia and stuff. But Gerard Parker's an offensive guy. It's great that the offense looks good, but realistically, one of these games, Louisiana, Old Dominion, Southern Miss, they're going to probably lose 2 of those 3. And so, like, I don't even necessarily know that the last game of the season will matter, because I think Southern Miss might be either undefeated in the conference I don't know who else is on Southern Miss's schedule, but they'll either be undefeated in the conference or probably have, like, 1 loss. Like, I just don't, I don't see another team in the West really holding a candle. It's nice that Texas State has done the work for everybody else and taken themselves out of it. Because early on, it kind of looked like, oh, we may have underestimated these guys. And the last 2 weeks, with the loss to Arkansas State and the loss to Texas State, or Troy, where they, in the last 2 games, have allowed a quarterback to walk down the field at the end and either win the game or tie. And I don't know, like, Texas State, again, best of luck in the Pac-12. Like, you're going to go 8-5 probably most years, 8-4 with GJ Kinney. Don't look too hard at the 4 and how those games are lost, because if you do, you're going to pull your hair out. we in the coming weeks, I think it's going to be after Halloween, are going to
Sure.
have an
Looking at
old
Southern Miss,
Texas
just
State. Oh, sorry. We're going to have an old Texas State underdog writer on the show. And
yeah.
he tweeted on Saturday that this team makes him grind his teeth. And I'm like, this is the GJ Kinney experience.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. So just real quick, wanting to look at Southern Miss, because you said that they could come into that last game against Troy undefeated or with one loss. And that really does look likely. They played their non-division games early with App and Southern winning both. They play Louisiana. I mean, so they just have the rest of the West. And we've said it ad nauseum, and we're going to continue saying it for the rest of the 6 weeks of the season or however many is left. There's not a ton in the West. Like, there are really good parts, but if you would have to put the 6 non-Southern Miss teams together to get a team that is like, all right, yeah, they could beat Southern Miss in the West.
Yeah, because none of the other teams have defensive pieces. So you would literally have to probably take 11 individual players from the other, 6 teams in the West.
6 teams, yeah.
And you would have to create like a super defense to even give yourself a shot. Because think about it, it's I guess ULM, their defense has come crumbling down in recent weeks. Like they played okay against Coastal, but they let a guy that completed 30% of his passes beat them. Arkansas State, 0 defensive playmakers. Texas State, 0 defensive playmakers. Troy, not a ton of defensive playmakers that we know about, considering the way that this game went. I mean, you can go through and reel the South Alabama has nobody really on their defense that makes any sort of difference. You would have, like I said, you would be scraping to find 11 guys throughout those 6 other teams that could do it. I just don't know. All right.
I guess real quick, as a quick transition, actually, I kind of to that point, I don't think we've ever talked about this. Your stance on divisions. We don't have to stay here long. Maybe we do a longer thing about it in the future, but your stance on divisions. We're the only conference left with it. Good, bad, and different.
I like them, actually. Yeah. I think it creates like a sense of, okay, we know on a yearly basis, like, who we need to beat and who stands in our way. You know, I remember when Southern joined the division, like, this conference didn't even have a Sunbelt title game. Like, it just went to whoever had the best conference record at the end of the year. And there were multiple years where teams were splitting the conference championship up because they didn't have a game because they didn't have enough teams to like qualify. So I remember like Southern's first year, they went 8-0 in conference play, and Arkansas State fans were pissed that year because they didn't play us and they lost one conference game. And we're like, well, if only we had a Sunbelt title game, like, we'd be able to resolve this. I think also it protects against what we're going to see this year out of the East, which is JMU and Old Dominion feel like the 2 best teams easily. I don't think what you need is them playing in the regular season and them playing in the Sunbelt title game like a couple weeks later.
Sure.
I think that protects against that. So I would like to see like a style matchup that I didn't see. You may get a rerun from the regular season to the postseason, but we don't need to see the same 2 teams play each other like 3-4 weeks apart. I just think that's worthless at that point. Like, I would rather see how Southern Miss stacks up against the winner of JMU Old Dominion rather than watch, okay, Southern Miss, or think about it this way. Southern Miss drops a conference game somewhere. They have 1 loss. JMU goes undefeated. They're in. Old Dominion loses 1 conference game to JMU. Or I guess they would have 2 at that point, or whatever. You know, everybody has 1 loss. Somebody's getting left out. And with divisions, it all games itself out. Like, again, JMU's going to play Old Dominion. The winner is presumably going to the conference title game based on the results of this past weekend. Whereas I hated when the Big 12 did this. We have 3 teams that all have 1 conference loss, so we kind of just draw names out of a hat to decide who plays in the conference title game. Like, I hated when they did that. It was the the Colt McCoy, Graham Harrell, Michael Crabtree, Texas Tech team, and then there was an Oklahoma team that was really good as well. And all those teams finished with one loss, and they literally, I think, flipped a coin to decide who played in the Big 12 championship that year.
Yeah.
Like, I hate
one of the D3 or the D3 football team that I cover, Barry, they play in the Southern Athletic Association, most notably with Sewanee, former SEC team Sewanee. And last year they were in a rock, paper, scissors with Trinity of Texas, and I think it was Center, where they were all 7-1 in conference. And it's just like, oh, we have 3 conference champions now. Okay.
I see that I think the way that it's set up now works perfectly. And then after this year, you just slide Louisiana Tech into Texas State spot and then just keep plugging and chugging. So, all right. So let's go ahead and get to week 8. We, like I said, are doing a double episode. So starting on Tuesday, tonight, October 14th, when we're recording this, Arkansas State is going to take on South Alabama. We didn't think this game was one that required like a ton of, oh my gosh, we got to get an episode out before this game is played, because frankly, it doesn't affect a lot as far as like West standings. I think Arkansas State wins fairly comfortably, just because South Alabama's not a good football team, and at least Arkansas State has Rayner and Rucker. That's basically all I have on that one.
Yeah, South Al at 7.5 point favorites in this one, actually. I really don't like that. I think Arkansas State, as you said, at least has Jalen Rayner. Like you could argue South Alabama, well, at least they have Kentrell Bullock, like at least they have Devin Voisin, but I mean, Jalen Rayner just really changes the offensive outlook of any team. And so I think Arkansas State wins this like probably 35-21, something like that.
All right, starting on Saturday at 3 p.m., we have Troy taking on UL Monroe. UL Monroe is starting their backslide that they had last season. At this point, they are struggling once again to score points. Their defense is suffering because of the lack of being able to keep drives alive on offense. And they take on Troy, who's hot right now, coming off of a 3-game win streak. I think Troy just keeps it moving. I don't think UL Monroe's defense is good enough to totally shut them down, and they're not going to. If Troy puts up more than 24 points, this game is basically, you can go ahead and wrap it up, because Arminta and the crew are not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, they're more than likely not to follow this trend, but they scored 21, then 31, then 48. They're just going up every week. They're again unlikely to. Yeah, they're bound for 56 points based on that trend. But Troy Tucker Kilcrease in recent weeks has just really impressed me, and I think he's going to not outduel Aiden Armenta, because it's like Aiden Armenta isn't even picking up the sword. But it'll be a de facto win by forfeiture in that department.
He's bringing a spitball to a gunfight. Let's put it that way. All right. So another a 3:30 game. Coastal Carolina is traveling to Boone to take on Appalachian State. App State's another team that's hot as of late. JJ Cole really powering them to some wins. This is where I think the Samari Collier thing is a nice story, like you said, but frankly, are you going to beat Appalachian State if you go 5 of 15 again? No. So
no, especially not if JJ Cole plays like he did. I mean, he through 1 week would be on pace for probably Conference Player of the Year, maybe edged out by Colton Joseph just because of the volume. But right, I mean, JJ Cole right now looks as good as as I said, good a quarterback as I've seen from App State in several years. And so I really like App here.
Another 3:30 kick. This one actually made it onto ESPNU. This is pretty much what I said is like the game of the year for the Sun Belt. Old Dominion travels to Harrisonburg to take on James Madison. We will have someone from JMU Sports News, that podcast, on next Sunday with us when we record to talk over the result of this game, win, loss, or draw. So it'll be good to talk over this game with them and also bounce some questions off of them. Number one in my mind is what happens with Alonzo Barnett randomly throughout the season, where he'll just throw for sub 100 yards. I want to ask those questions as well and get kind of their insight. But yeah, I just like James Madison in this one. I think they do absolutely have they have the defensive personnel to do what Marshall did, but I think they're even better. So they can make it even harder on Old Dominion. Plus, it's a home game. James Madison plays better at home than they do on the road, and I think they put some daylight between them and Old Dominion. And I think James Madison just keeps chugging along, and I think Alonzo Barnett is good enough to kind of will them to a win here. So
these are two really good offenses. Granted, JMU again kind of struggling as of late with the Louisiana and Georgia State wins. But the defense is really going to set them apart, set them miles apart, I think. I'm really interested to watch this one, obviously, not just because of the implications, but to see how James Madison and Bob Chesney kind of learn from what Marshall did and see if there's now a recipe for Colton Joseph. If, like we've seen with other quarterbacks in the conference, at some point you just get figured out. And I'm curious to see if Marshall had lightning in a bottle or if that's something that teams moving forward will be able to replicate.
I'm interested. I think the way to combat him is just to play contain, like with your edges, and just force him to just kind of sit in the pocket and maybe put a spy on him as well, and just force him to throw the ball every single down, because I don't think the receivers for Old Dominion, as good as they've been this year, are going to win against James Madison's secondary on a down to down basis. I think you might get loose for like one long touchdown here or there, but it's not going to be, hey, I'm peppering Naheem Abdul Rahim Gladding with nine catches, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like it's a lot of like big play guys, but not. You don't have a Corey Rucker who it's like, it's 3rd and 6. Who's the ball going to? I don't know. Whoever's open, I guess. And if they're not, then I guess I just scramble and get 3 yards and then we call it a day. So that's my big thing for Old Dominion is like, if the defense is going to be as bad as it was last weekend against Marshall, and you're not going to get the help around Joseph, that's a recipe for disaster right there. So, I mean,
it's pretty simple.
Yeah. Another 3:30 kick. Texas State is taking on Marshall. Texas State went from in a race with Southern Miss for the West to being winless in the Sun Belt. Marshall looks like they've got a legit offense now with Del Rio Wilson. They're 1-1 the last 2 with Louisiana, and then the win last week. I think Marshall takes this one, man. I think Texas State, I always had doubts about. My 2 like bets in the preseason were Texas State under and Southern Miss over. So both of those look like they're going to hit. I think Southern Miss only has to win this weekend and they hit their over for the season.
Sure.
So
the big thing here is just like you got to see Del Rio Wilson keep pushing the ball downfield, because he had a lot of really empty numbers earlier in the season. We've talked about this in previous episodes where it really was check down screen merchant, which is valuable, but not when, again, this is a Marshall team that doesn't have the running offense that it has in previous seasons. They need a guy at quarterback. And Del Rio Wilson also last week, mind you, led the team in rushing yards as well. So I want to see them keep pushing the ball downfield. And if they do, I think they beat Texas State pretty clearly.
And if Texas State takes a lead, the belief that they can hold on to that lead is like next to 0. That's the other thing too, is like no lead is safe if you're Texas State. Like your defense can give up points ad nauseum and it doesn't matter. So I think Marshall wins this one at home. I think this one's going to be a good win for them. 5 o'clock, Southern Miss is traveling to Lafayette to take Louisiana on. Southern Miss's defense will get some stops. Louisiana's will not. I think Louisiana's pretty comparable to Georgia Southern at this point. And so I think Braylon Braxton will continue to be able to air it out down the field and just kind of hit guys wherever he wants and throw touchdowns. So Louisiana's best hope is this one's a shootout, I think. Southern Miss's offense is going to move the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your best hope is just that you get another superhero day from lunch and, push it late overtime and give him the opportunity to go on a big drive like he did. I think it was 2 weeks ago against Marshall, or they had the bye, so it would have been 3 weeks ago against Marshall. That's really your best hope, but I'm not confident that the defense gives them that opportunity. Braylon Braxton's just going to dice him up. What I need to see, though, out of Southern Miss, especially as we consider looking forward at, I believe, possibly Troy, but realistically at Old Dominion or James Madison, the winner of that game, we need to see a run game. They showed it against the really, really poor Southern defense last week. For the first time all year, they had a 100-yard rusher and Jeffrey Pittman. I need to see them continue that against, again, another weak defense. But I need to see you even able to do it against bad teams.
Sure. And then the last game of the night, 7 p.m. ESPN Plus. I'm going to be honest, man. I'm probably not going to be paying close attention to this game. Georgia State is traveling to Statesboro to take on Georgia Southern. I saw a Georgia Southern podcast called this the Georgia Grown Bowl, but it was spelled Groan. Both teams are, I think, just both fan bases, probably both teams as well, are just kind of over it. I feel like this season, normally this would be a point of let's get up for this game. Let's all this stuff. And both teams are just kind of can the season just be over already? We're 6 games in and we're both just kind of tired and ready to be done with this.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for Georgia State, it's much closer than it is for Southern, but both fan bases are at this point just ready for, all right, who's the next hire? Everyone, we're 6 games into the season. Southern, you still have 4 years on a contract. I don't know how long Dell McGee is, but he's not here for too much longer. Both fan bases are already scouting FCS and trying to figure out who do we want to poach, what coordinator do we want to give a shot to. I think someone gets fired after this game, if not a head coach. And as you said with Clay Helton, almost certainly not him. And I'm unconvinced that it'll be Dell McGee. It could be. I'm unconvinced. Somebody gets fired after this game. A coordinator gets fired after this game. It's just a matter from which side.
Right. Well, that is week 8 in the belt. Like I said, we have a pretty unexciting Tuesday night game between two kind of middling to bottom feeding teams in the West. And then, you've got one kind of crown jewel game between JMU and Old Dominion. But Zeke, as we wrap up here, let everybody know where they can find you on socials.
Yeah, man. You can find me on Twitter at Zeke Palermo, ZekePalermo. Right now, I'm in the heat of Georgia high school athletic administration because the GHSA recently really reshaped how the playoffs are going to look. Previously, you had 8 regions in the state, and the top 4 from each region make state playoffs. They're going away from that. Now it is the region champion and then power rankings for the rest of the 32 slots. That's 28 automatic playoff bids, 24 automatic playoff bids that have now disappeared. So that's really lightened up my world as I cover high school athletics in Northwest Georgia. And it's interesting. I think it's probably an overreaction. I think it's an overcorrection to appease your Metro Atlanta 5A, 6A schools. But what are you going to do? That's just kind of how it rolls.
Yep. As always, you can email the show, warmweatherfans@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on pretty much every social platform, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. We are at Warm Weather Fans on all of those platforms. You can follow me on Twitter at Watch the Stone. We will be back next week, like I said, with someone from JMU Sports News to talk over the outcome of this JMU Old Dominion game and then all of the rest of the action from week 8. This has been Warm Weather Fans.